One and all, welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I am the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving our community as senior minister. Whether it is your first time joining us or you are a regular who has been attending for months, years, or decades, welcome and welcome back. We're delighted you've chosen to be together in community as we gather for renewal and spiritual grounding. As we gather on this particular Sunday, June 20th, our theme for this Sunday is that of connections with one another as human beings, with our planet, connections across time and history and even continents. How do those connections inform who we are? How do they guide us? How do they show up in our lives with great meaning? Deepening today, we're hoping many connections that are present with us on this day in particular. I'll start off by saying Happy Father's Day to those that are honoring and celebrating this day with connections to those who have either been fathers or father-like figures, those who may even transcend gender, embodying qualities of nurturance and support and encouragement in our lives in those positive ways. To all who are honoring and holding the beauty of such connections, we celebrate you and honor you on this day. We also recognize it's a nuanced day, and not all of us have had those positive and nurturing connections in all of the ways we may have wished for and desired. And if your heart is holding a little bit of that this morning, our love of our community and our support are also with you in the midst of that nuance. It's the middle of Pride Month, so we continue happy Pride celebrations. I understand Ipsy Pride this past Friday was quite enjoyable. Perhaps some of our community members were out that way. It is a month full of celebrating LGBTQIA+ identities and journeys. We're grateful to join with you if you are honoring and celebrating that sense of connection. It is also, as we have probably just followed in the news this past week, Juneteenth was yesterday, which is now a national holiday. There will be a bit more we'll return to in this service itself related to Juneteenth. And it's worth just a footnote for returning to in the future. There's a great depth to this tradition that has now become a national holiday, this commemoration that is worthy of a full Sunday service in and of itself. We will indeed return with great depth to this new holiday and what it might mean for us Unitarian Universalists. For today and for now, a brief noting and an honoring of all who commemorated Juneteenth yesterday, and we'll say a few more words about it shortly. Last but not least, those of you who are connected to Earth-centered traditions, today is the summer solstice, and in a season of transition and change, how beautiful on this day that marks in many cultures and many societies around the world, the official start of summer. It's in honor of that, I want to share with you a piece of writing by my beloved staff colleague, QuianaDenae Perkins. Now, this is a joy to be able to share this with you. There's a new UU publication out, Unitarian Universalist book out. It's called Shelter in This Place, edited by Meg Riley, brand new, available from the UUA bookstore. QuianaDenae Perkins' piece appears in that, as well as a couple of new pieces of writing from me. We encourage you to check out the UUA bookstore, and if you feel so called, there's some really, really beautiful pieces of writing, reflections on 2020 and the pandemic era that we are now also starting to transition out. It's turning into something different and new. In honor of this summer solstice day, I offer this piece called The Turning by QuianaDenae Perkins. At the last turning, I was invited to a meeting among the sun and the earth and the moon. The sun asked, Do you have space in your heart for a great light? The earth said, I will hold you down if you're willing. The moon said, I will guide you if you need it. And it was easy to say yes to the energies of balance. So for a turning, we have found ourselves dancing. The sun took the lead, sharing a drop of their luminescence. I held it deep in my heart when the darkness loomed, held it on the tip of my fingers when others called for it, coming to understand space, becoming a beacon, learning the nuancing of shadow and light. The earth kept her word. I was planted deep and rooted hard. I was uprooted, replanted, and loved until I was healed and able to feel the small tug from soil calling me down, demanding that I grow again. And the moon, a sister auntie, stayed faithful at my side, always hovering, always playing, laughing, reminding me that joy takes many forms and keeps no schedule, reassuring me with loving pats and oh child, whispered commentary, a subtle and wanted companion on this journey. And the turning is coming again. The sun said, daughter, you have done well. The earth said, healer, who is still healing, you always have home. The moon said, beloved shadow worker, we will cast new spells soon. We, you and I, radiate the light. We rotate the life. We revolve back into love. We enter a new season of possibilities. In that spirit, may we continue gathering and enter into this time with a fullness of heart for the love and support of community during this time of continued rotation and possibilities.
Many seas must the wide ocean be Good morning, everyone. I am here with my father. He is going to help me light the chalice today. I'm lucky enough to live within driving distance of him right now for the summer. So for Father's Day and for General Assembly, I drove up and surprised him last night, and he so graciously agreed to light the chalice with me this morning. So I invite you now to join me in our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. So my dad and my mom raised me in the UU Fellowship of Corvallis, Oregon. And my dad actually just finished a 3-year term on the board as treasurer. So we have some UU roots that run deep in our family. And we know that in every UU community, there are promises that we make with one another about how to be in community together. And at UUAA, we have written down these promises in the form of our covenant. And I now invite you to read our covenant with me. The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth and love, and to help one another.
As you may have already gathered from the piece of music that we just heard, among the various connections that we are honoring on this particular Sunday, included in that are our connections with one of our partner congregations. Our community has two Unitarian communities overseas that we are in ongoing and beautiful and deep relationship with. One of them is located in Eastern Europe in the region of Romania known as Transylvania. That was music that the Bob Dylan piece was being performed by the members of our partner congregation, our partner church there in Transylvania. We have more such connections that are being highlighted with that community in this Sunday service. In just a few seconds, you'll be hearing a Transylvanian children's story that will be, the artwork is original artwork by Kathy Muha, one of our congregants, narrated by Lee Boki Burke, another one of our congregants.
The Proud Oak, Hungarian Story. Story written by Fésűs Eva, illustrated by Kathy Muha, translated and read by Hajnal Minger. Once upon a time, there was a young and proud oak in the forest. He was confident, stretching his limbs toward the blue sky, filtering the golden sunshine between his leaves, and his strong roots collecting all the nutrients of the earth. He was the most beautiful in the forest. The birds looked at him longing to nest in his strong and protective branches, but he proudly shook them off. "Go from here, noisy bunch. I am not going to be your servant. My beautiful crown was not meant for you. Shoo! Shoo!" He would not even stand a visitor resting on his branches. And if an unsuspecting migrant attempted to make a home, he would just shake them off with the half-built nests. In the fall, the hungry squirrels would try to climb on him and ask him nicely, "We are so hungry. Please give us some acorns." But the oak just cracked so loudly the squirrels almost fell to the ground from the fright. Only the fluttering wind could swoop into his crown, the sounds of which he would enjoy all day long. Slowly, everyone began to avoid him. Not even the deer would rub around his trunk. Once, I saw a mushroom sprouting from the ground near him, and when he noticed where he was, he just waved his hat and moved on. Imagine, not even his shade was needed for anyone anymore. For a while, he managed like this. However, in time, his ring started thickening around his waist. Like it or not, a worm burrowed into his pulp and chewed on him day and night. He woke to splitting pain in his side. It was spring, and all the trees were happy for the fresh juices flowing in their bodies. Only the proud oak stood sad and dry. The worm was tormenting him. Oh dear me, he sighed. I will perish. But he was overheard by a busy squirrel mama tending to her litter. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? She asked. I will call Dr. Woodpecker at once. No, no, he protested. She will cut me up with her sharp beak, for I never let her nest in my hair. Nonsense, she said, and she ran away to fetch Dr. Woodpecker. Dr. Woodpecker was there in no time. She started examining him right away, despite all the moaning of the oak. She tapped here, she tapped there, and she suddenly found it. Here you are, you little troublemaker, she said, and she reached in with her strong beak and got the worm. The oak felt better instantly. I am better, he shouted. Everyone was relieved when the woodpecker got the worm. All who were standing around, the deer, the squirrels, and the birds, were curious as to what would happen next. The oak was surprised and asked, Dr. Woodpecker, why did you help me? Everyone is angry with me. Hearing this, everybody started laughing. Even the bellflowers were laughing and banging their little heads together. You silly oak, we were not angry with you. You were angry with the whole wide world. Dr. Woodpecker added, you were sick, but now you will get better. I prescribe some medicine as well. You need more joy, more bird songs. It shall be, repeated the animals as they danced around the tree. The oak just stood there humbled and quiet for a long time. But suddenly he opened his arm branches toward the birds and called, please, please come here to me. And they came. They came chattering, singing, and whistling happily. They came as if nothing would have been any different before.
Good morning. I'm Phyllis Valentine, and Lee Boakey-Burke and I co-chair the Partner Church program. Our program was started back in 1997 as a social justice program for us, but it has turned out to be much more. We'd like to tell you a little bit more about it. We've always worked with our partners to determine what their needs might be. Early on, one of those needs was a place to meet socially, and we bought them an apartment and helped them renovate it and continue to use it on our visits. We have also provided room and board scholarships for university students and occasionally done some fundraising for a car and a minivan. But I think what they enjoy the most, besides these financial benefits, is our very presence there, supporting them as a minority, both religiously and ethnically. But now things have improved to the point where our partner church minister is initiating programs, social justice programs. And almost all of them are ecumenical, designed for the whole village or the whole city, where everyone can participate. And they're focused on culture, they're focused on other needs of the area. And Reverend Istvan has created some videos that I'd like to share with you one by one, talking a little bit about the program that he's been involved with and initiated. And we have helped provide some support for these programs. Reverend Istvan has created both men's and women's ecumenical chorus groups that sing at competitions, that sing in church sometimes. And he has sort of single-handedly speared this effort. Let's hear one of his choruses practicing. One important part of cultural education is learning to dance. And there are dance competitions. And so it's very important that all youth sort of learn to dance. One of the programs that was started last summer is equine therapy, therapeutic riding for young children and youth to help with balance and coordination and self-esteem. And here is Boglarka and Reverend Istvan on horseback. Both are accomplished riders now and participate certainly in helping with the program. So let's watch a little video of last summer's activity. The latest effort of our partners is music therapy, which they see very broadly. First, it started with thinking of music for the elderly, bringing elders together to talk. Many people live by themselves, and so this would be an opportunity for them to listen to something familiar. And in that endeavor, Heinel Minger was very helpful in finding a bunch of Hungarian records and old American records too. And we shipped a big package to them. And Istvan renovated his old record player from childhood. And the music therapy program will start this summer in the old Unitarian school building, a building that was confiscated by the communists many decades ago and only returned to them 3 years ago. It's no longer useful for them as a school, but this is a way that they will use the building for cultural endeavors. So let's listen to a little bit of a promotion that Istvan prepared. During COVID, all of our communication back and forth has been via email and Facebook. But recently, we started to Zoom with our partners. and it was wonderful to see their faces. Well, on the screen now is a Zoom photo that was taken at Christmas time when we got together, all the people from the last pilgrimage and our hosts, and we had a wonderful time talking and laughing a lot and just looking at each other's smiles. So it's great fun to work on these social justice projects with our partners. It's great fun to have them provide input on what we're doing and to find out what we're doing. And I encourage others to be more interested and to come and find out what we're doing.
All right. My name's QuianaDenae Perkins. I serve this congregation as the coordinator of congregational life. This afternoon, I want to talk to you a little bit about the history of Juneteenth. The history of Juneteenth is complex like all things in U.S. history. It is a blended story that weaves many truths and perspectives. We are sure that 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, the enslaved people of Texas embraced freedom. 1 year later, and every year since, Black Americans have been celebrating that freedom moment. A few days ago, Juneteenth became a national holiday. This was not done by chance. The work started decades ago and was led by many, including Miss Opal Lee, who in 2016, at the age of 89, walked from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, to the nation's capital to influence the process of Juneteenth becoming a national holiday. Today, we offer just this educational video for those who are new to learning about Juneteenth. If you are looking for more chances to have conversations about race and the complexity of America, please consider joining our Cask book discussion group. We put the link for the sign up in the chat. We hope you find this video educational and supportive in our process to better understand the deep and intense world around us.
Peace, and welcome to the Atlanta School for Gifted Youngsters. Today, we're going to be answering the question, what is Juneteenth? Well, the first thing that's important to understand is in America, there's actually 2 Independence Days. The first Independence Day happened on July 4th, 1776. The second Independence Day, that happened on June 19th, 1865, which came to be known as Juneteenth. Following the Civil War, on June 19th, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger led his Union soldiers to Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War was finally over. Texas had over 250,000 enslaved people at that time. Here's the problem with that. The Emancipation Proclamation that was signed by President Abraham Lincoln was 2.5 years earlier, on January 1st, 1863. So for 2.5 years, over 250,000 enslaved people in Texas were still enslaved. So upon Major General Granger's arrival, he issued an order to the people of Texas, stating that all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. As you could imagine, many white people didn't like this. So this news of freedom became known as Independence Day for Black people in America. The first actual celebration of Juneteenth took place 1 year later in Galveston, Texas in 1866. By 1980, Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday. And in 1997, Congress declared June 19th Juneteenth Independence Day. Also in 1997, Ben Haith, who was the state director and founder of the National Juneteenth Celebration Foundation, designed this flag, a symbol that gives all Americans the opportunity to recognize American freedom and African American history. In this flag, you see the Star of Texas bursting with a new freedom throughout the land and over a new horizon. So the Juneteenth flag represents a new freedom, a new people, and a new star. celebrating the lineage and the history of African people and their African American contributions to society. To this day, Juneteenth is celebrated all around the country. In fact, right here in Western New York, Buffalo, New York has the largest Juneteenth celebration anywhere in the country outside of Galveston, Texas, the place where Juneteenth originated. There you have it, the meaning of Juneteenth, the Independence Day for Black people in America. Thanks for watching. Peace.
So this afternoon, as our time together deepens, we're going to be engaging in a little bit of shared conversation, shared dialogue, QuianaDenae, Perkins, and myself on this theme of connections. And given the little way stations we've already visited in today's service, I can't help but notice that our sense of belonging, our sense of home is often rooted in history and in culture and in the events around us, the relationships we intentionally cultivate, build, choose to experience. And I want to invite my dear colleague, QuianaDenae, if you might share a few words about your own journey in exploring a sense of those connections of belonging and home and culture and history. How have you had a chance to deepen and experience some of that?
I'm going to offer two tidbits here because one just came to me in my spirit. And the beautiful thing about being on Zoom is that I could ride this thought that's in me right now. And so I'm loving this. You know, we were talking about Juneteenth and home. And for me, the first time I celebrated Juneteenth was like 87, 88, 89, like right around like 7th or 8th grade in Minneapolis, a place that I deeply resonate with in all of my spirit. And I remember being in the backyard of Oak Park Community Center and running around and getting to eat hot dogs all day. And I didn't clearly understand what was going on other than my community was gathered and that people who looked like me were in the field having fun. And so for me, Juneteenth has been a part of my story, my history for a long time. When I moved here, I had to find Juneteenth. I was like, where are my people? But a couple of, and Minneapolis for me is home, but I also honor that last March, my relationship with that space fundamentally changed because of George Floyd. So there's all of these feelings I have about home, but I do want to share with you all this moment where I truly felt at home. I had the privilege when I was earning my master's degree to travel to Ghana, Africa. And if you don't know a lot about Ghana, what I will say is that there is two slave castles there, one in Almina and one at Cape Coast. And we had a chance to tour that. I was with a bunch of students. We were a collective bunch of folks. And whenever we were out, because we were this mixed bunch of white and Black kids, people knew that we were not there. Like we were tourists. But one night we had spent some time in the hills, and and I still own this dress. A woman make me a shift dress out of like hand-dyed, tie-dyed material. And when I was walking around one night in the city without anyone and by myself, people talked to me in Twi. People called me sis and ma, and nobody knew I was American. Everybody assumed that I was a Ghanaian woman out to get water and the last bit of her groceries for the night. And I remember walking back and just feeling so proud that somebody recognized home in me, even if I wasn't seeing it in myself. And that moment has lasted. I went there in 2005, and that moment is still living inside of me like a really bright chalice candle. So home for me has looked like a lot of things, Manish. I wonder, have you traveled internationally? What does home look like for you?
I love your sharing there. It's such a gorgeous story of almost this spontaneous, organic sense of belonging that you experienced there. You know, the conversation's already, it's reminding me of how a sense of belonging at home, it can be experienced in very subtle and nuanced ways. And the opposite of that can also be quite subtle and nuanced. So growing up as a child of Indian immigrants here in the US in the 1970s, when there weren't yet that many Indian Americans, there's of course many in the US now, but back then we were still a smaller and expanding part of the population. I routinely got asked where I'm from, which is an innocent enough question on one level, but when you're born and raised here, and this is the only country you've known, and people ask you all the time where you're from, and the answer being looked for is not Pittsburgh, because I would say that. No, where are you really from would be the insistence. Well, here, the United States, no, where are you really from? Or where are your parents from? Okay, finally, okay, that's what you mean. My parents are from India. They immigrated here. But given that trajectory, and a child doesn't have a lot of tools to like understand and analyze these types of things, right? So it becomes a subconscious sublimation of like the people who are maybe the majority population in the US think I'm from elsewhere, so I must be from elsewhere. So I assume that my real land of belonging was India, not the United States, the land of my birth and the only culture and people I've ever known. When I was in high school, my final year of high school, my dad was offered a position in New Delhi. His career was with Westinghouse primarily. He was offered the opportunity to head up their offices in India. Now, how many kids do you know that are thrilled to give up their senior year of high school to go live in a country that they've never lived in before? I was thrilled because on some level I thought, finally, I'll be with my people, the people that are the motherland, the place where I'm supposed to be from. And I went and lived in India for my last year of high school. I went to an international school there. To my shock and surprise, at every turn, what I from the local Indian teens my age, who I figured would be my support group, people I'd be making friendships with, lasting friendships, I got, you're so American. And they didn't want to have anything to do with me.
Ooh,
I didn't fit their cultural references. So they were actually kind of rejecting me and saying, you're so American, we don't get you. And I had it was a very disorienting experience from the first 17 years of my life, feeling that American society and culture was telling me, you're not from here. I go to the place that's supposed to be the motherland. My peers there are saying, you're not from here. And it sparked this kind of very intense reflection on what is belonging and what is home. And I think over many, many years, decades of adult living, I've come to a very different sense of home that can transcend specific places and is really grounded in a sense of people-oriented connection. And sometimes those people-oriented connections are very specific places, but I feel like a home is like an inner sense of belonging for me now that includes different cultures and different cities.
I think, Manish, you spoke to it. I didn't mean to speak over you, but we're in dialogue, right?
Yeah.
I think one of those things that we've talked about, and I think is real for me, is that home is layered, right? So when I feel at home as a mom is when we're here at our house and everything's good and one of my kids is close and we're watching a show they love. That's home for me as a mama. But what feels like home for me as like a person who loves the outdoors is when I'm in the middle of a tent or like the fire finally got where it needs to be. And like home kind of isn't this stagnant or like brick and mortar place for me all the time. It's a roving place. And, I've been in and out of Ann Arbor for about 10 years, but I'm here now. And I've been here this time for 6 years. So like it's home. I can't deny that anymore. But it's been a process to find my people or the group of things that make me feel the most authentic and feels the spaces that feel the most intrinsic. And I've been able to find some amazing. Yesterday, we literally went to an abolitionist barbecue that was a queer friendly abolitionist Black celebration. And when I saw the announcement, I was like, well, basically kids get on your shoes. Like they basically talked about who your mom is and said, come eat free burgers with us out by the park. And so we have, and I found a sense of home with a whole new bunch of folks who I just met yesterday because our values aligned. And I just think there's so many places I've been able to find that here in Ann Arbor. And our brick and mortar church has been one of those places. So Reverend Manish, where are some places, you guys haven't lived here very long, you've only lived here about 3 years or so. Where are some Ann Arbor things that you find that resonate with your spirit and your sense of connection and community?
Yeah, as somebody who kind of has a multifaceted understanding of home and belonging, many places that fit that and are rooted in that. Ann Arbor has become that for me and my family as we're finishing 3 years here. Our neighborhood that we live in on the west side of the town, we just discovered this spring that there are spring and summer block parties routinely held basically twice a month over the warm months. And what a joy to discover that. And then get to discover that, our neighbors are really lovely people. We're getting to know them and really resonate with them. Our congregation too, and I think this pandemic time, it's really helped me appreciate a couple of things that, at this point in time, about a quarter of a century of my life has been grounded in Unitarian Universalism. And it's been a really both beautiful and kind of dawning realization that Unitarian Universalism and Unitarian Universalists are really profoundly a sense of my kind of belonging and kind of emotional, spiritual sense of home. I just never even contemplated the question really until I started, over the course of this pandemic, as we often checked in on one another, right? People that are dear to us and whom we're dear to. And I just began noticing just how many of those folks are long-term Unitarian Universalists that I've been connected to since the early days of my coming into the faith tradition. And it was this beautiful thing of like, wow, I've lived in a bunch of different places, and yet this is my sense of home too. And while that has even like a national and international sense to it, we're all Unitarian Universalists, and there's a sense of home and belonging in that. It was a really beautiful, it added yet another piece of nuance to what is already a nuanced concept for me. And QuianaDenae, you're in Ann Arbor just a couple of years more than me. How have you experienced the sense of belonging and home and connection here?
It's something that I've had to seek out. It's not like it shows up on my doorstep. So I've done a bunch of things over the years. When I lived here the first time and my kids were under the age of 3, both of them, maybe 3.5, both of them were, I actually had business cards. And when I would meet other Black families or other queer families, y'all, I literally would pass out a business card and be like, call me. There's people now who are like, how do you guys become friends? I'll be like, hello, they were at the park when I was at the park. Why wouldn't we be friends? So it's been a really intentional process. Cultivating the energies that I want to keep around my family, cultivating people who I like. There was a time when Abijah would go to the park and like their dad would come home and be like, so we have a play date next week. Your kid, made a best friend. And now we're on a play date next week, because we just cultivate community wherever we go. We have to be with good people, and we will call out the goodness. Like, you are a good person, let's be friends. Like, that's what it takes to be my friend, is goodness and kindness. But I'm also glad I get to role model that as a parent. Like, if people are kind to you, they can be in your circle. And if people aren't kind, you can set up boundaries to protect yourself and make sure we're safe. So it's been this really, as I grow community, it's been interesting to see how my kids grow, friend community, who can come to your birthday party, who's in your Girl Scout troop. There's all of these nuances we've been saying around how they are seeing community, how I'm creating community around them, because they have a bunch of uncles and auntie-like folks like Manish in their life, helping them expand the boundary of what is family. So COVID for us, the pod team, we have a pod. So yes, we're a family, but then we have a pod of folks who, you need a ride home from school, masked or unmasked, whatever you need, little one, get in the car, this adult is safe. And that's been a really, a kind of sense of home to people who you can depend on, has been super important in my grounding here. But yeah, I want to just peek in a little bit, Manish, and talk about what it means to create community when you're a parent, because it is Father's Day, right? We should lean into that maybe, but,
yes, yeah.
But lean into this idea, like, how do you create community for your babies? Because their sense of home is yours too.
it's in all of these places we're talking about. It's in neighborhood. It's in families we've gotten to meet organically through either the theater community that I've been a part of, or running into families in parks and activities, as you've said, and our congregational family and community. You know, it's I've been reflecting a lot on that as we now, as of today, officially enter summer. It won't be long now until we're back together as a congregational family. And there's a lot to that. You know, on one hand, I was in the building, and I'm in our building today, but I was here yesterday with some staff and congregants. We were doing some planning for the fall and beyond. And at one point we're in the sanctuary, and I bawled. I just started crying at how much I miss us as a community and us being together. And it won't be long now until we can physically be together in that way, those of us who choose to be physically together in that way. So I'm holding a little bit of that anticipation and that looking forward to that. And that too is a nuanced and complex thing. Many parents, and I'm among them, you are too, QuianaDenae, we realize that we have to continue holding health concerns and safety concerns for our littles, while those of us who have chosen to get vaccinated as adults and 12 and up, or whatever it is right now, 16 and up, that are able to do that, the younger ones can't. And so there are important things that have to be thought through about that, about friends and community who may have other health-related concerns, maybe immunocompromised or can't get vaccinated for various reasons. And even those of us that are fully comfortable being in the same physical space with one another, with or without masks, whatever that might look like, there's going to be a process of getting reacquainted. You know, what I experienced yesterday being in the sanctuary, and the tears and the deep emotion that came up for me, I imagine that'll come up for a lot of us in the months ahead as we start resuming activities and start seeing people in familiar places. On a certain level, those are responses on the other side of having navigated a societally traumatic event together. We need to be aware of that. You know, I thought after the fact, I was like, it was so predictable for that experience was going to be very emotional for me. And yet I wasn't thinking about it at all until it already happened. And it was very emotional, very jarringly emotional. And I anticipate that we'll have a time like that for a while, you know, as we're getting back together. And then the reacquainting ourselves with one another. This time period, for some of us, it's been profound transformations taking place in terms of how we understand ourselves, what we're doing with our lives, even where we're living. And for others, it might be more minor, but there's a continuum there, and there has been change and transformation. So we'll be getting to know one another in terms of who we are today versus who we might have been in February of 2020. So there's important stuff ahead in terms of what this sense of home and belonging is going to look like and feel like and be like. And I think I also take a little bit of sense of comfort and we'll be doing that together with people with whom we share values with and who we care about. That's a good thing.
So Manish, I know we want to close up because there's a couple more things that we want to do in our service. But the thing I want to do, there's two things. One, I just want to acknowledge that if folks and groups are gathering and you need help understanding consensus or using language that is welcoming and aligned with who we are as a beloved community, please reach out. I'm reachable by email and we can have a conversation about that. We have a great tool in our policy, but also I can be the human part of that tool that's not just words on the paper, to help humanize and to help make sure that you and the group that wants to gather can stay in alignment with what we believe to be beloved community. Manish, as we close up, I want to know if you could take what I think is your right hand and bring it to the screen. Other side. Yes, so see how my hand's this way? Yes, oh, come closer, turn your hand to the side.
Oh.
Yes, I want to high five you.
Okay.
So turn the other way.
Oh, like that.
Yes.
I've never done that before.
Me neither. I just made that up as I was talking, but I think it was a beautiful moment for us to try to understand each other, come together, and to talk about collaboration in this really real-time moment. That I can have what I know I need, my hand right here, and Manish can be right there, and not always, well, let's try it again, and not always be in the same place, but our intentions and our hearts are there. And so I'll leave you with that.
Thank you for the time together.
The Reverend Theresa Inez Soto often says, all of us need all of us to make it. That has always been true, and it is true today. Whether this is your first or second time with us, whether you've been a member for years, whether you live in Ann Arbor or, like me, are joining from another place or even time zone, we are here, together but apart, in this holy moment. For each moment in community is holy. We are here because of each one of us, sharing our gifts with each other. All of us need all of us to make it. Each week we receive the offering, an opportunity to share one of your gifts with us. Your contributions ensure that our community can continue to support itself. We invite you to give to UUAA as generously as you're able. You may do so by clicking the link in the chat box or going to uuaa.org/giving. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Friends, thank you for this morning. It has been my pleasure to be a part of this community and this conversation. I'm going to reach over and grab my chalice. As I lead us into this closing of the sacred space, I want to hold in my heart all of the energies of today. For some, it's Father's Day, which is enduring, beautiful, and sometimes tender. For others, it is a Juneteenth celebration weekend. It's actually 3 days, just so that y'all know. We're honoring the end of slavery, but also we are honoring the resounding 155 years of Black joy and excellence that have come since that moment. And let us not forget that it is Gay Pride Month, GLBTQI Pride, a remembrance of a rebellion that set people free to love authentically And you know what? I've got some friends who are super lucky because they are Black queer fathers. And this whole weekend has just been a party and a swirl for them. What a magical time to be alive, to be in love with life and community. We honor all the truths of this day, and we carry forth the energy of care and collaboration in our hearts. I bid you to go now in peace, Ashe and Amen.